Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Right Guys podcast. Oh my gosh, yes, we voted for this. We're going to be explaining the South Africa genocide. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Welcome back to the podcast, Right Guys podcast. My name is Max McGuire here with Mr. Producer Josh Hammerling. Originally, this podcast title, at least for the live title, was Yes, We Voted for This, because we now have the second world leader to walk into Donald Trump's Thunderdome in the Oval Office and get completely made to look so silly. But I also realized that I was going around trying to pull sources, and Josh, the media, the mainstream media, is working overtime to convince the American people that there is not anything even remotely close to a genocide happening in South Africa. So it feels necessary to do a deep dive into that again. Like here is what is this? This is The Guardian. The headline that The Guardian ran is Trump makes baseless claims about white genocide in chaotic meeting with South Africa's president. Just so we're clear, they're saying baseless claims. Donald Trump played a video and he handed him a pile of what looked like 20 or 30 news articles. So they're so used to this, baseless claims, baseless claims. Donald Trump actually came with receipts, with evidence. He presented things to the South African president, including one video clip that the South African president said, "Where is that? Get with your staff, have them tell me where that is, because I've never seen that before." So for the headlines to run with Trump makes baseless claims, when he quite literally handed the South African president a pile of papers and rolled in a TV screen like he was a substitute teacher in high school, right?
No way. I didn't see it. I don't know.
They rolled it in like he's a substitute teacher, like it's Stand and Deliver. We're going to watch a movie class. We're going to watch Romeo and Juliet. Who was the guy who directed that? The Leonardo DiCaprio one. That was always the go-to. That was always the go-to one when I was in school. They had us watch that in English.
We had to sign a waiver because the version we watched had boobs in it. So
yeah,
but that was the old one. Old one.
Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, basically retold in the Los Angeles crime scene, crime families. Wow. So yeah, this is the headlines, and then this is what the New York Times ran with. Trump lectures South African president in televised Oval Office ambush. Wow. They say he showed a video and waved printouts of what he said was evidence of racial persecution of white South Africans. But then when you read the article, it says the clash in the Oval Office centered on Mr. Trump's insistence on false claims of land seizures and mass killings of white Afrikaners. So they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves, Josh. So we're going to break it down. We're going to play the clips, and we're going to break it down from there. Before we do, we have to always deal with our definitions, because there are different ways to define something like genocide. You tell someone genocide, generally they have an idea of what would come to their head, right? Maybe they think of Rwanda. Maybe they think of the Holocaust. Maybe they think of other genocides, right? Are the Armenian genocide, perhaps? Maybe they think of Pol Pot in Cambodia. There's lots of examples you can think of, but everyone, when you hear that term, you have an idea of what it means, even if you don't know what it literally means.
Yeah.
But when we deal in facts, we have to know what it literally means. The term genocide was first coined by Raphael Lemkin following the Holocaust, following World War II, and it was codified by the whole world and the United Nations in the Convention on the Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And Article 2 of that convention defines it very clearly. It says, quote, in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, killing members of a group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. And since then, there have been other kind of terms. So if one racial group goes into another village and rapes the village's women with the goal of producing babies that are not of that village's racial or ethnical makeup, that can be considered an act of genocide because you're trying to destroy the future of that group. You'll notice here that nowhere in this definition does it say it has to be state sponsored. And I think that as we watch these videos of Trump and South Africa's president, I think you're going to see he is pushing back because he's insisting we're not doing this. But just because the South African government isn't doing it doesn't mean it isn't happening.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't have to be state sponsored. Oftentimes it is, because to kill entire ethnic groups, usually you need a lot of power, you need a lot of money, a lot of force. But the Rwandan genocide didn't automatically start with government with government control. It was shock jocks, the equivalent, on the radio, described the Tutsis as cockroaches, and it built from there. So that's the definition: to kill in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. The Afrikaners, the Boers, the white farmers in South Africa absolutely are part of a unique racial and ethnic group. So the South Africa's president, I want to make sure I don't butcher the name.
I'd like folks just to realize it's real emphasis that genocide really means to go after an ethnic group, or at least a group that is different from yours. And usually when you start justifying genocide, like Max is saying, you have to start claiming there's something they're not, like rats. It's easy to demonize. The Germans did it with the Jews. The Rwandans did it with, or the Tutsis did it with the Rwandans.
The Tutsi cockroaches.
Yeah. So I see a parallel now, and I think you're going to keep laying that out here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so if this isn't genocide, then what I would argue is it is the first step on the slippery slope towards genocide. Like what's happening, if what's happening in South Africa isn't legally genocide, then it is the first of the murders of the Rwandan genocide before you started getting a call on the radio for everyone to go out and murder their neighbors. Because there has to be a first, right? There has to be a first in everything. So the South African president's name, Cyril Ramaphosa. Interesting is that he used to be very anti-Trump, and now he's there with hat in hand. So he's there to set. We're gonna play the video. He's there to try and get the United States to lift the trade restrictions, the tariffs, because his country, as we've covered on this podcast, is doing very poorly. About a third of the country is unemployed, rising crime rates, really, really bad. And to top it all off, food prices are going up, and now white farmers are literally fleeing the country for their lives. And that is the issue at hand here. Right before his meeting with Donald Trump, the United States State Department approved about 50 of these white farmers into the United States as basically refugees, asylum seekers. And they had a credible claim that they were in fear for their life in South Africa.
Yeah.
And when you hear the media say this isn't happening, these refugees, these asylum seekers, filled the paperwork out and said, I had a credible fear. Obviously, that is a very low bar now, but they met that bar, right? So to say that there's no evidence of violence when they are quite literally abandoning their homes, abandoning their property, their farmland,
their possessions,
taking just what they can fit in suitcases and fleeing for their life. It's ridiculous to say that it's without any actual threats. So that is behind all of this. He's coming into the White House looking for trade relaxation of tariffs. Trump is like, what's going on with the white farmers? And it kind of boils over into this.
Turn the lights down and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. South Africa, occupy land.
So that is literally someone standing up in the South African parliament calling for the occupation of white farmers' land, to kick them off their land and take it back so they could be held in black hands.
That's who we are. Never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is
Holy
part
crap.
of a revolutionary act.
Oh my gosh.
Now he is, albeit not a majority party, he is a minority party politician, but that is him standing up saying every revolution requires there to be killing at some point. Now here is one of their rallies in a gigantic stadium filled with people where they're chanting "Kill the Boer." I think it's the Boer, which is basically the white man. Kill the Boer. So that's kill the Boer, shoot the Boer, brat, brat, making gun noises with his mouth.
That's unbelievable. It looks like a Nazi rally.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The man of DAPE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have turned a white man. Not because Mashaba and Suri will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we're starting with this whiteness. We're cutting the throat of whiteness.
Wow.
Kill the Boer. That's gun noises.
Shoot to kill? Oh my god. This is like fascist.
That is a full stadium.
Yeah. It looks like a nut. Oh my god, it's huge.
Yeah.
This is like a Nazi.
Listen to this.
I'm saying to you, was not called for the killing of white people, at least for now.
At least for now.
We are not calling for the killing of white people, at least for now.
I mean, you understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocidal.
What he went on to say in that interview is, no one knows what the future holds. I can't guarantee the future. All I can say is, at this time, we are not calling for the killing of the white man.
Oh my god.
Again, this is happening. You are a white man. We are going to hit them. And you are going to run. Shoot the Boer, the white farmer. We are going to hit them. We are going to shoot them with the machine gun.
Good lord.
They are going to run. We are going to shoot them. They are going to run.
Who will expropriate land without compensation, whether they like it or not. If they object, they can seek refugee in America.
We're going to take their land, and if they object, they can go be refugees in America.
No wonder they're trying to escape. There's stadiums of people calling for your death via execution with machine guns by the civilian. Oh my God! I would want to get. I would have left everything behind as quickly as I could. How many people have actually died in this now? It's got to be
thousands. So what they're claiming is that all of these murders of white farmers are just individual murders. Like the general rules there are the same ones here. The crime exists in the urban areas, in the inner cities. It is abnormal for the murders to be happening in the rural parts of the country, right? I mean, that kind of bucks the trend of the crime, the gang violence, right? Murders out in the countryside, especially 2,000 of them, which also include burning down farms to make sure that family members can never return. It's a deliberate act, right? It takes a lot more effort. And here's the last bit of the video that you showed him.
Now this is very bad. These are burial sites.
So he calls it burial sites. It's a memorial that they created.
Right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning.
They lined up white crosses, one for each of the white farmers killed, all the way miles down the road. And then they had a car caravan parked on the side of the road as a remembrance. Trump described it as a gravesite. I don't believe that's a gravesite. I think that was a memorial that they were setting up to show the scale of it, that you need a helicopter or a drone to fly the length of the road to capture. I mean, they do that in the United States. They put a cross or a flag in the National Mall for every kid who's killed by gun violence. All different organizations do it all the time. Seeing that, knowing nothing about the actual crimes, murders happening in South Africa, you kept saying it looks like a Hitler rally.
Oh, it looked like a Nazi rally. Old school, 1938. And they would fill the stadiums. The only thing they need next would be book burnings, going from house to house, dragging people out, checking their papers. I mean, it's scary how quickly like stuff like that reappears in history. Holy smokes. I'd get the hell out of there. I would have been gone.
Here is the other view of the room where I believe these are cabinet officials. They're government officials that came with the South African delegation. The video is right over their shoulder. Watch how uncomfortable they are. The woman, I don't think the woman looks at it at all. Watch this. Oh, hold on. Sorry, let me. I used to automatically do that. Here we go. Here's the video.
Starting with this whiteness, you are cutting the throat of whiteness.
You're cutting the throat of whiteness.
Wow. The farmer.
She's sitting there smiling, not looking. The president of South Africa didn't watch, barely watched. He looked stunned. Listen, the South Africans were very defensive, and they said, this is not us. That is a minority party. We didn't do that. But as Trump asked him, and I believe I have the clip of it, why didn't you arrest this guy? He's sitting up there saying, kill the white man, cut his throat, shoot him with machine guns. Everyone's dancing. It's like it's a nice little pop song. He didn't have an answer. And we almost didn't get an answer because NBC tried to interject and change the topic. Imagine having a world leader in the Oval Office where the president is presenting him evidence that these killings are likely genocidal in nature because there's a coordinated effort to kill people because of their racial identity. And then you get NBC News asking this question.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You know, you to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing. They also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. Go ahead.
Just to be clear, that was the first question after watching the video we just watched.
Yeah.
It was a deliberate effort to try and change the topic.
They came armed with it. They knew they had to deflect. Look how uncomfortable the room feels. The U.S. delegation there is...
Look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk is there. He's a South African expat.
Yeah.
He says that the reason he cannot run his satellite internet, Starlink, in South Africa, even though he is a child of South Africa, is because he's white.
Wow. Blatant racism, genocide.
And
we talk about this stuff, but I'm blown away by the moment, the political moment that Trump has done here. Like, anybody and everybody that comes to the Oval Office now has to be ready to answer tough questions.
Yeah.
That's never happened before in a president since Teddy Roosevelt. Maybe he was the only guy that would probably challenge you to a fight in the Oval Office, and that was the way he would do business. This is a new territory altogether. Just
so we're clear, those 50 South African farmers that we admitted into the United States, they filed an asylum claim saying they had a credible fear that if they were to remain in South Africa, they would be persecuted and they would probably be killed. That claim was adjudicated, and the United States government said it had merit, and they were brought in. This argument over whether that's happening is, at least for us in terms of our law, over.
Yeah.
They had a credible fear. We can argue over what it is, what it means, but they had a credible fear. And I'm not talking about the claims that were filed under Biden, which is like, I live in Caracas and there's gang violence in Caracas, so I'm afraid for my life. No, these are people who go to sleep worried that someone's going to come in the middle of the night and slit their throat just because they're white.
Yeah.
Right.
With machetes.
Yeah. So Trump basically dismantled that NBC News reporter, and then we get the response from the South African president.
Because what you saw, the speeches that were being made, one, that is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what
Trump
he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
Trump calls them out on a small party. They filled an entire stadium.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now
been utilized. The farmers are not black.
See, Trump is not an expert in this at all, but he can call bullshit when he hears it, right? Imagine someone saying that, no, there is no genocide in Rwanda, because even though the Tutsis are being killed, here are some Hutus that were killed in a home invasion, right? I mean, like,
it's the straw man argument.
It makes no difference, right? The fact that there's a lot of crime in South Africa makes no difference when you have this specific targeted extermination of an entire class of people, which is being spurred on by politicians and figures chanting it in stadiums, everyone dancing to it. Trump calls him out on it, though.
I don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers, and you saw all those grave sites, and those are people that loved ones going, I guess on a Sunday morning, they told me, to pay respect to their loved ones that were killed. Their heads chopped off, they died violently. And, you know, I mean, we're here to talk about it, and I didn't know we'd get involved here, but I will say this, that if the news wasn't fake like NBC, which is fake news, totally one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible. But if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. They don't want to talk about it, but now they have to talk about it.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what is, because usually the mantra, the saying in media is, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah. I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So if you can tell a story about violence, death, murder, suffering, that tends to lead in the A block. Right. What does it say that this has been relegated in the mainstream media? They call it a conspiracy theory, just like they call Joe Biden's mental health decline a conspiracy theory, right? Everything's a conspiracy theory until it isn't. I mean, Trump's not done. He brought news clippings.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's...
No, I want to see that part.
Thank you very much, Steve.
What would you like President Ramaphosa to do about the situation that we've just seen on the screen?
A legitimate question.
I don't know. Look, these are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. Horrible death. Death. I don't know. To pick anyone. White South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws. And this is all, I mean, I'll give these to you. So when you say, what would I like to do? I don't know what to do. Look at this. White South African couple say that they were attacked violently. And,
President Trump, when will you go and see for yourself if it is indeed true?
well, I could do that. Look here.
Well, I could do that. But...
South African reporter, the gall to pipe up.
Yeah.
When will you go and inspect the genocide? No, lady. The president of the United States, leader of the free world, is not going to do a walking tour of the genocide fields, of the killing fields. I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen.
No.
No.
It's a hubris sort of response. Like, well, you should come see it for yourself. Well, I've just laid out the case. F you.
Where did we last hear that?
Democrat talking point
from Zelensky in the
Oval
Office.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Trump is saying that people are dying. This is going terrible. Zelensky says, well, why don't you come here and see it for yourself? No, the president doesn't have to do that. We have satellites. We have spies. We have SIGINT. We have signal intelligence. We have all this different intelligence.
The media.
To give the president of the United States a picture. He doesn't have to walk in a war zone or inspect the killing fields to have an opinion on
burial sites all over the place. These are all white farmers that are being buried. And he asks about a jet that was given. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You know, you are so bad. You're such a bad reporter.
Good Lord.
I've never seen something like this. And I've also never seen, well, we have seen it, but CNN ran trying to give cover to the genocidal war chants in the stadiums. They tried to explain it away.
That this is not true. What the videos show is Julius Malema, the far left opposition leader of South Africa. His party is called the Economic Freedom Fighters, and it also showed former President Jacob Zuma. What Julius Malema was singing, "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer," was an anti-apartheid song from the struggle against white minority rule in South Africa. They've explained that this is not a literal attack, call to attack and kill the farmer because of the historical nature of that, but it's been weaponized by groups in South Africa and increasingly by the MAGA right in the United States to essentially misrepresent what is going on in the country, Boris.
Lies. Lies.
So the song is kill the white man, kill the white farmer, shoot him with machine guns. They say slit his throat,
with machetes.
Cut his head up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like, oh, well, OJ wrote a book. If I did it, that's not a confession. That's just a work of art, a hypothetical, right? And this is the part that really pisses me off. They say, oh, that was an anti-apartheid song. Yeah, it was. It was among the people during the anti-apartheid struggle who wanted to kill the farmers, kill the white man. See, the struggle, apartheid was terrible. It was racial segregation, power vested with white people, black people not having the power. It was terrible. It had to end. Everyone at that point knew it had to end. It was really a question of how is it going to end? Is it going to end in a violent civil war, the way that you've seen in other parts of Africa where white colonial forces have to fight back? Like Rhodesia might be an example of something like that. Or is it going to be similar to what you see after the Rwandan genocide, which is that we're not going to keep fighting. We're going to have a national unity movement, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The push out of apartheid. I don't recommend books a lot on this channel, but I will recommend these two books. This is Desmond Tutu. No Future Without Forgiveness. I recommend people read that if they want to understand that side of coming out of it. And I also recommend that people read Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. Those were the two thinkers, spiritual leaders, political leaders in South Africa who drove the country out of apartheid, not through a bloody civil war, but through national reconciliation, national unity, coming together and understanding that the future of South Africa is one where there are white people and black people, not a situation where they get out of apartheid by killing the white farmers.
Yeah.
This is like people trying to claim that Malcolm X has the mantle of the civil rights movement. Right? I mean, like we had a similar thing in the United States. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King advocated two very different ways for African Americans to resist segregation and discrimination and to try and rise above it. Malcolm X was very much on the militant side of it. Like that's like the Black Panthers trying to claim the mantle of the civil rights movement.
By any means necessary.
Yeah. So that's what's happening in South Africa when they're saying, oh, that's just an anti-apartheid song. It is, but among the sect of society that was cast aside, saying we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. We are going to have national unity. We're going to follow Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela. Desmond Tutu got a Nobel Peace Prize for this.
What's crazy is they're complaining that, well, they're claiming it's an old song that they sang then. Then my question is, why are they singing it now? If it's an old song and it has no longer any context to your world, why sing the song unless it's tradition? And that alone would mean that the tradition there would be that killing the Boer for the land is normal. Plus, that president. Go ahead. Make
no, finish.
I was going to say, and the guy that was sitting there, president of South Africa, he says that was just one party's belief. But in 2018, they amended their constitution to take the land away from whites. So
yeah,
how is this an off thing? How is this not the norm when they made changes to the Constitution to go after them?
Yes, it is. It is very similar to how you hear in this country that the civil rights movement wasn't good enough. We all need reparations. The black people need reparations. So that movement in our country is very similar to what we just saw in that video in South Africa. Right. The reason that they are chanting these anti-apartheid songs is they are not convinced that the country has sufficiently moved past apartheid. And the reason being is that the white farmers they view the white farmers as generational, as the generational inheritance of the apartheid system. That the only reason they have that land, that African land, is because the apartheid system allowed them to have it, and they've received it through generational wealth transfers and inheritance, and they shouldn't be allowed to, because the only reason that their forefathers, their great 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 grandfather, whatever, had the land is because the apartheid system allowed it. Right? It would be like going into the South and finding anyone who owns plantation land and demanding and killing them for it. Right? Oh, your great 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 granddaddy ran a plantation with slaves, so we're going to kill you for it because you shouldn't have this land. This shouldn't still be in the family. That's a crazy argument, right? It just objectively is. And
it's their leading argument. Keep going.
The reason that they are chanting that is because they reject the notion that the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions in South Africa brought the country further. They view success as getting rid of all the white people, so that anyone who has any wealth or any power that can trace that wealth or power back to apartheid have to be eliminated. So no, they are not just singing it as a historical nod to the protest songs of the past. No, they are rejecting Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela and the unity movement forward, the Truth and Reconciliation movement, and they are demanding the violence. They want the revolution that many in South Africa called for. There was no guarantee that Nelson Mandela or Desmond Tutu were going to be successful. I mean, when Nelson Mandela came out of prison, there was a wide expectation that he was going to lead a violent revolt. Right. And if you listen to Nelson Mandela's speeches, he always gave it the caveat of pursue peace until it's no longer possible, and only then pursue violence. Right. He wasn't 100% passive. He was no Gandhi. A lot of people lump him together with Gandhi. He always put on the back shelf for later, put on the back burner. We might have to need a revolution, but he insisted on trying peace first. A lot of people expected him to come out of prison, out of his imprisonment, and lead that violent revolution. The people who are dancing right there, those kinds of people. And when he didn't, and when he turned the other cheek, and when he called for national reconciliation, it pissed people like that off. And so what we have to recognize is this is not normal. After the Holocaust, the world promised never again. Right? That we would never again allow this to happen. And whether 2,000 white farmers being killed qualifies as genocide, or as I said earlier, it is the first step down that slippery slope where at the bottom is genocide. Either way, the world has an obligation to do something. And Donald Trump calling it genocide in the Oval Office, Josh, is incredibly significant from a foreign policy perspective.
Yeah. Because does now the UN have to get involved if there's actual genuine genocide occurring? So what is what is the standard for the UN making that? What's the charter? Because there's plenty of times the UN likes to move in on stuff and say this is genocide. We'll go there. We'll help the people. Then we need money from the United Nations to sit there and take care of it, and all that money gets spent on things other than the actual problem that they were sent there to solve. So. What's the charter on the UN on that? What's the charter for their neighboring countries? What's the charter for BRICS nations that they're a part of? Are all the other BRICS nations okay with a form of genocide happening right now? I mean,
do you remember
China?
Do you remember under Obama when he called it the Armenian genocide, and the Turkish government flipped out because they reject that it was a genocide? Mm-hmm. And Obama making that kind of declaration, his administration making that declaration, it had international ramifications. Now, it obviously it meets all the definitions of it. It's an interesting argument, though. How can you accuse a country of committing a crime when their behavior took place 40 years before the crime was actually defined? Right? That's kind of what Turkey's saying. Like, how can you say we committed genocide when you didn't, when the international community didn't define genocide until the mid 20th century? How can something we did in the early 1900s be held to the standard of a statute, a law passed 50 years later, 40 years later? And it's a decent argument, and it's why so many legal scholars, lawyers, prosecutors actually opposed the Nuremberg trials in Germany. They didn't oppose holding German war criminals accountable, but they opposed the idea that during the war, the United States, Russia, and England could meet and decide that something's a crime, and then prosecute people for committing that behavior before the crime was defined.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's ultimately, it's a principle we should all be against. We should all be against that. Like, imagine the government saying, hey, starting today, this is now a crime and you did it yesterday, so you're going to jail.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, so there's about 1 million or so members of the party from the guy that was chanting for the death.
Tiny party.
There's 62 million people, so that's about every 1 in 7 people holds that view in a country that large-ish, give or take. Your stat guys out there. That's a lot of people who believe in taking away. So many people that once they decided they were going to, put it in the Constitution, they could take the name back. I don't think that's a small party anymore. That sounds like a lot of people.
That is more than the number of perpetrators behind the Rwandan genocide. Rwandan genocide, even on the high end, they estimate 200,000 people participated as the aggressors, as the perpetrators. And they killed more people faster than any other conflict in world history.
Overnight.
So if that party, they're trying to say, oh, it's not the government and it's very small, million people in the party. You don't need 1 million people to go out and do this. You don't need 200,000, right? Because remember what I said at the very beginning. It's not going up. Genocide is defined as the attempt to destroy in whole or in part an ethnic, religious, racial group, in whole or in part. You don't need to get all of them for it to be genocide. You don't need to kill every white farmer in order for it to be genocide. You just have to, because of their whiteness and because you don't want white people around anymore, try to destroy that white identity in part. Yeah, killing a few of them meets the definition of in part.
Yeah. And don't be fooled here. They're calling for the extermination of these Boers. They're not calling for some sort of peaceful revolution. They're calling for their deaths with machine guns at chance, at crazy Nazi-looking gatherings. It's weird. Let me ask you this, man.
And just to be clear, that part of the clip that we heard of the politicians saying if they don't like the land seizures, they can go be refugees in America. That's not genocide, but it is ethnic cleansing.
You bet, because you're removing them from the area.
Forcing them off of their land is ethnic cleansing, which is like the baby sister of genocide, but it's in the same conversation.
Where are all the groups around the world that fight genocide? Where are all the groups around the world that have fought to make sure that no group should ever be attacked? Where's the American African Americans? Where are African Americans, the U.S. saying stop this genocide? Because doesn't genocide mean genocide regardless of the race? Should we be protecting every race regardless of whether they're yellow, black, red, whatever color you want to put in there, right? And where's the media on covering this? Is it because the narrative that black people cannot be racist permeates into Africa?
Ding, 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 ding.
That
is ultimately the reason. Here in the United States, the academia say that it is impossible for black people to be racist because they lack the power to subjugate others, right? So even in a world where there's a black president, a black vice president, right, they'd still say that systemically they lack the power to do it. The reason is because apartheid was very bad, right? It's terrible. I mean, apartheid is in the same conversation as ethnic cleansing and genocide, not to the extent, but it's in the same conversation in terms of unacceptable, terrible, inhumane treatment of other people purely on the basis of their race. It is very hard. Like, a liberal will not go to bat. They could literally go out and say, we are exterminating all of them. And they could move out and do it. And Josh, there would be people explaining it away.
Yeah.
Saying that this is the natural consequence of apartheid. And we tried it Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela's way. And unfortunately, it wasn't successful. You have to rip it out, root and stem. That's what they would argue, right? That's what they would argue. And that this is the natural consequence. They will say that this isn't new violence. This is a people trying to break free of the grip of apartheid. And we tried it the peaceful way. And unfortunately, the only way we can get rid of them is to kill every single one of them. There would be people on the news who would make that argument, either directly or indirectly. But that is why. I mean, like, it would. No one defends the Nazis because the Nazis did terrible things, right? No one defends Pol Pot. No one defends Stalin, right? We are taught that things are indefensible, that when you commit heinous acts, you are indefensible. No matter what happens to you, somehow you had it coming. And even though in South Africa, as it is here, like, we Americans owe no reparations because there is no American alive who owned slaves, right? In South Africa, there are families that have inherited land and businesses, absolutely. But these are new generations of people running these farms. And the claim is that the sins of the father are the sins of the son.
Yeah. It's just, oh my gosh. And again, we don't hear about it. And Trump's the first to sit there and really confront South Africa. And after Zelensky, he realized that it's best to let the American people see it the way they're seeing it. Right? No longer are politics separated by the doors where they still try to rub elbows with these people afterwards. He just laid out to bear all of the problems going on with that genocide in South Africa right now. And I don't know how they squirm out of this one. He tried to talk his way out of it. The liberal media is trying to bail him out of it. So are they going to do their due diligence? Are they going to start covering this? Are they going to stop being critical of the Trump administration for letting in white people? And where are the people on X who have been extraordinarily racist to those Boers that came over here just for being black or just for being white? Yeah. And the black people out there are vehemently going after him. It's some really strange displaced racism. I don't think it's got any place in this world. And the Democrats seem to support it. And they're also acting like the biggest communist group I've ever seen. The EFF is wild over there. They have violence. There's been stolen money. Anti-Indian. Their ideology is extremely violent. They've had legal issues. They've intimidated journalists.
It is the South African equivalent of Black Panther, Black Marxism, Malcolm X. That's their equivalent.
And
that's their equivalent.
They even wear hats like the Black Panthers.
Imagine today if a group came out, and there are groups like this in the United States, who say the civil rights movement failed. It didn't go far enough. We should have had a revolution to begin with. We are Malcolm X's group. We're gonna take back this country violently. It's the same kind of argument. And you ask what comes next. There is a legal international norm. It is not a treaty that we have signed and ratified, but it is a convention that we have signed on to, at least saying we support this, called the Responsibility to Protect, also known as R2P. I wrote my thesis on this in college. R2P basically says that genocide and ethnic cleansing have no place in the world, and that when you recognize that genocide is happening, you have a responsibility to protect the people who are being victimized.
Wow.
Now, this is not we haven't signed onto this like an international treaty where we are duty bound, legally bound to do something, but it has been the policy of the United States for well over a decade that when there is genocide, the United States will intervene to put it down.
Wow. Well, I don't think it's happening in this case.
No, but it is an interesting. And I'm not saying we need boots on the ground in South Africa, but it demands the question of if we are to live in a world where we say never again to the Holocaust, to genocide. We live in a world where we pledge that when genocide's happening, we will do everything in our power to stop it from happening. And then Trump from the Oval Office says this is genocide. How do you then go into the back room and talk about a trade deal?
Yeah, I know.
Right? Because while the South Africans say we didn't perpetrate this, this is happening through their inaction. So you can say we're not going to put boots on the ground. That's fine. But this is really a moral, ethical question of how can we say this is genocide and then go about business as usual, go about with the rest of our lives. Like the Democrats, I tried to find Samantha Power's book because it's an excellent book. I couldn't find it on my bookshelf. I'm sure it's there. There is a part of the book where she described a meeting inside of the Clinton administration when the Rwandan genocide was starting. She was in that meeting, and so was Susan Rice. Ring a bell?
Good old Susan. Oh, yeah. Obama's.
In that meeting, they were debating whether or not they should classify Rwanda as a genocide. Really? And what Susan Rice said at the time, and this is Samantha Power's account, Democrat on Democrat, what Susan Rice said at the time was, if we classify the Rwandan genocide as a genocide, what will that mean for the midterm elections in the United States, the 1994 midterm elections?
Wow.
So even the Democrats that say we have to do something are on the record saying, I really hope we don't do something. But how can we live in a world where we say genocide is bad, it's unacceptable, we will do whatever we can to stop it, even if you're not willing to put boots on the ground, which you don't want to do?
No.
How can anything be discussed with the South African president until that's settled? Because right now, the South African president saying it's not happening, turning a blind eye to it.
Yeah. And it's unprecedented, right? You can't trade with the guy who's ignoring the death of thousands. And ignorance and ignoring the problem, doing nothing about it is almost a form of complicity, because Trump's right. Why didn't you do anything about it? Yeah. And I'm not going to put my people on the boots, but I'm going to tell the world what you're doing here, and you're going to have to answer to them. And I have to answer to the American people. And how do I answer to them and say, hey, I just made a deal with a country who's full of a bunch of communist sociopaths out there? I mean, it's devolving. Yeah. Johannesburg does not look like the same town it did 10 years ago.
No. Boots on the ground, no. But the kinds of things, if you believe in R2P, the responsibility to protect. And I'm not talking about how that could be used to drag the United States into a conflict it doesn't belong in. If there is bona fide genocide taking place and you have the power to stop it, how can you sit back and let it happen morally? Right? It's a moral question.
Yeah.
And it's especially a powerful moral question. Like, imagine if the U.S. soldiers marching through Germany didn't liberate the camps. Right? Yeah. They had the power to. So no, that's your domestic affairs. We're not gonna liberate the concentration camps. Right? You have the power to do it. You have to do it. When the American military found out what was happening in these camps, they raced to them. Mm-hmm. They got there as fast as they could. Right? Yeah. How can we live in a world where we say it's happening and do nothing? And even worse, negotiate trade deals. If boots on the ground are off limits, trade embargo.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what Absolutely. Did we do? What did we do to Nazi Germany? Trade embargo. We put a naval blockade as much as we could. Right? They had the U-boats, but if this is genocide, the conversation should be, what are you going to do to lift the trade embargo? Not talk about tariffs, the trade embargo, nothing in, nothing out.
Yeah.
When are you going to take action to protect these people so that trade can resume? Forget about 10% tariff.
Mm-hmm.
How about no trade? Period.
So did that come out of these meetings today?
No,
Trump,
but that's the kind of thing that if you believe in responsibility to protect and you say that this is a genocide, right? How can you possibly talk about lowering the tariffs? The only conversation should be, what are you going to do to protect these people so the tariffs don't have to be 1,000,000% or 1,000,000,000%?
Because we will. And again, it goes to Trump doing something that no president's ever done before, and that's putting it on the live screen. Like that was a live update, y'all. The only thing he was missing was holding up his camera as he was talking to the leader, right? We just saw real politics happening in real time.
Yeah.
Joe Biden would have had the balls to done this. Trump wanted to, but he was still following he didn't know better at the time. Brock didn't do shit. Bush wouldn't do it. This is great. And I want it to happen more. I want the American people to see how this stuff shakes out. No longer behind closed doors do these monsters get to hide and say, you know what, we'll deal with a 10% tariff, then we'll be good. And we'll hammer out the details.
It had to happen out in the open, right? Because otherwise you would say that the Trump administration is turning a blind eye to it, right? It has to happen out in the open. And Josh, CNN, we played the clip. CNN saying, oh, you're missing the context. This is what it really means. CNN is using the same excuse for shoot the white man with machine guns, cut his neck with a machete. They're using the same defense that James Comey used for the seashells.
It's art.
It doesn't mean what you think it means. It actually means something else. This is the ultimate form of gaslighting. That kill the white man with the machine gun as an entire soccer stadium full of crowds are hooting, hollering, singing along, and dancing. It is the ultimate form of gaslighting to look at the American people and saying, that is not what you think it is. That's actually love.
Wow.
Because in that context, look at that entire stadium, if even one person goes out and kills a white man because of that, then yes, that is a call to ethnic cleansing, is a call to genocide. It doesn't require a mass adherence to the call to violence. I guarantee you that the people who are going into these rural communities and killing white farmers have consumed that content. I guarantee it.
NBC is still 1 hour later. Breaking. Intense meeting with South African President Ramaphosa. President Trump plays videos promoting baseless claims of white genocide in that country. Baseless still. They're not even walking away from it. They're still carrying the line. They're still towing this one. And they're going to tow it until it's forgotten in the next news cycle. But that's fine. That's what they're going to do.
If this was 1994 and Donald Trump was president and he brought the leader of Rwanda in and he played the radio clips in the country telling people, go out and kill the Tutsi cockroaches.
Yeah.
They'd say baseless claims of genocide. It's the same deal. Give you the final word.
Oh, they are so willing to hide and lie behind everything. This is what communists do. It's happening in front of you. They tell you, don't believe your eyes, don't believe your ears. And if you do that, you're not going to see what's actually going on. And I'm still waiting for the media to do their part. Where are they? Where are the media?
Yeah. Well, that's it for this edition. I thought this episode was good. I think we did a decent breakdown, a little history, a little political theory, a little moral theory.
Yeah.
So hit that share button. Share us on X, on social media. We're on Rumble. We're on YouTube. You can go ahead and copy that. We also have the audio edition of the podcast available everywhere audio podcasts are found. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podbean, Audible, all great places. Subscribe there and it will auto download when new episodes come out. That's it for this edition of the podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Joshua Hammerling.
Remember, the fight to take back the country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together. See you next time.